to the cloud. So welcome everyone to the June 4th Austin Tableau User Group event. As I mentioned earlier, today we're going to be walking through 2020.2 in a hands-on way. So we're going to be looking at a lot of the 2020.2 features like relationships, metrics, some beginner things, as well as some advanced in this really exciting and very feature-rich release. But we're going to be doing it through the lens of another really interesting topic, which is financial data. Our presenter today is Greg Rossi. He's the creative director of Zwar. So Greg, he's been the creative director at Zwar for about 3 years. He also works a lot with financial services. So he's kind of our go-to guy for FinServ questions. But prior to that, he had a master's in science and worked extensively in the field of psychology around statistical analysis. So a lot of different things that he hits. He's very fascinated with financial data. So I'm going to kick it over to him. But during this, a couple quick things. I mentioned if you have questions from him in the Q&A, you can also post them in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. At the very, very beginning, at the very top of the chat, and I'll repost it right now, we have a link to a Google Drive document that has the PowerPoint that he's presenting that also contains links to the data source that he's also going to be using. I will right now for the attendees, because it seems like some might be having access, actually accessing it via the link in Zoom. I'm going to shoot out a quick email to those on the line so that you can access it as well. But this should be a really exciting way for you to actually get hands-on with data. And with that, I will pass it over to Greg to actually kick off what he is calling a workshop. And I'm very excited to see, or I'm visualizing and analyzing the stock market with Tableau 2020.2.
Thank you, Whitney. What a flattering introduction there. It's a real pleasure for me to be here in front of the TUG. I know I've met some of you, a majority of in person during one of our other meetings, and I hope to soon again be able to meet in person again to reignite the user group on-prem. Okay, so it was a great introduction. I don't think I need to say any more than what he has already said. Today is going to be a really hands-on workshop. So I would tell you to prepare to get your mouse ready if you're going to join me in this workshop. We're going to be doing some split screen. So if you get that PowerPoint, there's almost going to be like an instructional guide that works through that you can follow along. I tried to make it as quick as possible to implement calculations and stuff. So I actually put calculations in the PowerPoint that you can easily copy and paste into Tableau. So without further ado, why don't we get started here? Okay, so I'm going to skip over all this stuff has been said. All right, so let's quickly review what's going to be happening in this workshop today. And in fact, I'm going to start my timer to make sure that I stay on schedule here. Okay, so during this workshop, here's a little overview of what we're going to be doing today. We are going to be working out through an entire data pipeline. So I'm going to show you actually how to connect to Google Finance data. I don't know if anybody has ever done this before. It's a really fascinating thing. If you go into Google and search for, Apple share price or Tableau or what is it now, Salesforce share price, that first initial graph that pops up, that is all actually stored in Google Finance. And we have actually a way to access their API to obtain that data. So I'm going to show you how to connect to that. We're going to do that through a Google Sheet. It's actually a really fascinating way of doing this. After we get that set up, we're going to walk through connecting to the data with Tableau, of course, and I'm going to review a little bit about unions. We're going to touch on joins a little bit, but obviously the primary thing is going to be relationships that we focus on. There may be a little discussion about LODs. We may not go super deep into those. The next portion, as you can see, this is broken out into 3 sections here, is going to be the data analysis and visualization piece. So of course, dashboarding, we want to do that. We're going to highlight set controls, which is an amazing new feature. I'll show you that. We're going to get involved in some dashboard actions. We're going to do some calculations. We'll do some animations. We'll do some parameter actions, which is one of my personal favorite things. I think it came out a couple versions ago. And then we're going to round it off with the presentation and sharing piece, which is where we're going to discuss metrics. So as Whitney said, there's 2 ways we can go about the workshop today. You can try to follow along with me and work speedily as we work through this process, or if you want to take a little bit more laid back approach, I've actually already published the dashboard up to Tableau Public, and that's what you're seeing right here. And in fact, what I will do is paste this link into the chat. So if anybody would like to access that, feel free to go in there and download it. You can follow along if you want, but ultimately the objectives of today's workshop, I would like to teach you, how to build a data pipeline with Google Finance. Hopefully you'll learn how to leverage Tableau 2020.2 new features. And then along the way, I'm going to slip some Tableau tips and tricks. I heard that there was a real hunger from this group to expand your Tableau knowledge and learn these little like nuances along the way. So that's what I hope to provide you all today. All right. So I'm going to start with an overall topic. The data value chain is this methodology that we at Zwar use. I use it personally anytime I take on a data challenge. And really what the data value chain is, it's this process to work through in order to maximize the value of your data. So as you can see, it's almost like this chain flow here, right? And you start with getting data from a source. Obviously, you need to do something with that data so that you can analyze it. So generally, it leads to piping that into some kind of storage mechanism. Ultimately, I'm sure many of you have experienced, you generally need to transform the data at that point to prepare it for analysis. Then you begin analysis, and then we get to the final stage, which is presentation. So with regard to the workflow we're working on today, this is essentially the underpinning of what we're doing today. So Google Finance is the source of the data we're going to be using. We're going to essentially be piping, storing, and transforming that data with Google Sheets, which is pretty fascinating. I'll show you how that all works. We're really going to be leveraging the Google Finance API to pull the data into Google Sheets. And then of course, we're going to bring in Tableau to do the heavy lifting with the transformation bit, the analysis. And then generally when I refer to presentation, that's like, how do you take the results, the insights that you've created and share those with an organization, share those with your teams. That's generally where Tableau Server, Tableau Online, Tableau Public comes into play. All right. So just some context there. So let's get moving into step one here. So we're going to start with the source, pipe, and store data from Google Finance. As you can see, number one here, a Google Finance reference API. So if you click on this link here, what this is going to show you is how Google Finance API is set up. And I'm going to start my split screen here so we can begin seeing both of these together. I highly recommend doing this view here. It makes it really easy to look at two things at once. So as you can see, this is how Google Finance works. Generally, you reference Google Finance with this term. You generally need to reference an index or a share price, and then essentially these are attributes, which you'll see this entire list here. Feel free to take a look at this like whenever you want to. I'm gonna touch on a few of these things today. If you're new to the term API, what that really means is an application programming interface, or as you can see the definition, a set of functions and procedures that allow you to essentially extract data from some sort of operating system application or service. So the service in this case is going to be Google Finance, right? And the really cool thing about using Google Finance and Google Sheets together is that you can actually create a live feed, a live data feed. And the additionally cool part about that is Tableau has actually built Tableau Public to use live Google Sheet data feed. So if you build out this stock application that you can maybe use to monitor your own stocks, or you want to analyze the market, however you use this tool, you can actually publish that to Tableau Public, and there's a little tick box that comes up that says, I want to keep my data live, and it'll establish a feed there, which is really awesome. So number two, pipe and store data into Google Sheets. Okay, so now we're going to get to the tables that I've already kind of curated for you, so don't worry, you don't have to do too much at this point. I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and this should open the data that has already been curated for you. So you're going to click on that, and you'll see that there's a couple of tables here, and you can see them in the tabs down at the bottom. So the first table is a master table, right? So this is current data for today's date. And I'm going to show you really quickly how we can reference Google Finance API to begin pulling data into this table. So obviously we have a date, which is always going to be up to date for today, right? A today function. The company name I put in there, and this company ticker is really the underpinning of a lot of these calculations, and I'll show you why. If I click on share price, we're looking at today's share price, obviously. And here is how we reference the calculation. If I click in here, it'll actually give you a little preview of how to write these calculations. So again, Google Finance calls the API. We're referencing the ticker. So this is C2. So we're looking at this field here, right? And then we leverage these attributes that I had mentioned in this Google Finance document. So as you see, as I go down the line here, price is referencing the share price. Price open is referencing the opening share price high. And we've got all these different attributes as you go down the line for pulling data. And I'm not going to go too involved into what these mean, But if you wanted to learn more about that, you can look on Investopia and all these other places to see what what volume is, or market cap. But essentially, volume helps people determine, do I want to do I want to sell my shares in this stock? How is it performing over time, and so on and so forth. So you'll notice we have this one master table, which is going to be today's date, and then I created these individual company share price trends over time. So now we're looking at the close price, so close share price per day over every single date that you're seeing in this category. And each of these tables is focused on one company. And we have CRM, as you may know by now, it's no longer Tableau. Tableau got absorbed by Salesforce, so now it's CRM. And really the nature of the work we're going to be doing today is taking 6 different companies, including Tableau and some of its technology, maybe partners, but also competitors, and doing like an analysis over time. Again, use this tool however you want to. If you invest in personal finances and want to track the own shares that you're involved in, this is going to enable you to do that. Okay. All right, let's keep moving here. So overall, we should be seeing a structure like this. We have our public companies table, which is the first one in here that I showed you. And then we have all these supplemental tables that are individual companies and historical share price feeds over time. Now I want to take a quick pause right here and just put it out there. I want to make sure that people who are following along are able to access these tables, and you've gained access to this somehow. So I'm going to take a minute here, and maybe we could do, Whitney, if you want to do the hand raising technique to see if you guys feel you're ready to move on. Please go ahead and raise your hand so that I know that people are ready to go.
We have a good group saying go forward.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. By the way, I am working on getting everyone the file. I didn't realize our official email platform doesn't allow for attachments. So I'm working on a solution in the background. You'll see it soon.
Okay. So I almost wonder if maybe what I should do then, I'm actually going to go ahead and share this link too, because that may just get you access to the data if you need that. Anyone with the link can view this. I'm going to drop it right in the chat. If you're having trouble accessing that PowerPoint, see if you can at least gain access to these tables that I just shared in the chat. Now again, while we wait for that, I'm going to keep talking here. The ultimate goal of this, of course, is to build a finance tracking app, and this can be used for a variety of purposes. Today, kind of the focus is, we could tell a story, right? Like we could tell a story over time. We could see when, coronavirus hit and really started to, everyone started taking a nosedive. You can really start taking a look at, if you have particular companies you're interested in, like I want to look at these 2, these are of interest to me. I could click on those and do some kind of analysis. You could use this as your own application. I have my own personal stocks that I follow, and Tableau makes it really easy to create almost like a custom application to do this stuff, So use it as you will, use it for your advantage. And how are we looking on hand raises over there, Whitney? We actually, I see a question there. You actually don't need to download this. We're actually going to live connect right to these tables in Google Sheets, and I will show you. That is actually going to be the next step. So good question.
Greg, as you show how you're connecting to these tables, can you also make sure, just kind of walk through what that process looks like whenever you first connect? We have a good question about showing how you can automatically add rows for each day in the supplemental tables. So just as you walk through the data.
Yeah, absolutely. I can actually highlight that really quickly here. So if you can see, this actually does stay up to date, which I think is what the question is referring to, right? Like we want to see up-to-date data constantly. So I wrote this calculation, which I think you should be able to click on and see if you're on the table. So basically what it's doing, it's pulling in Google Finance, it's referencing this ticker, it's referencing the close price based on the date, which is going to be the next field here, right? So I'm looking at today minus 365 days. So that is going to give me the entire year. And then there's an additional function in here, today, which is actually what keeps it current. So it returns the current day. And then there's an additional one there, which, let me see, if I click in here, does it give me? Yeah, so we have start and end date and intervals. So end date, of course, is today. So that way it'll always stay up to date. And then the interval is going to be 1 day at a time. So that's going to give me the day level granularity. I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, feel free to hold on to it and I will return back to it at the end. All right, how are we feeling? Are we ready to move on? How's it looking over there? Okay, cool. All right, let's get into it then. So this is the exciting part. This is the data analysis and visualization. I think the part that everybody's here for. So okay, in this section, we're going to connect, transform, analyze, and visualize, of course. So let's walk through really quickly how we're going to connect to these Google Sheets. And I think this will actually reference the question earlier, do we have to download them? The answer is no. So hopefully you have installed Tableau 2020.2 on your computer. If not, that's okay too. You may just not be able to use all the features today. So I'm going to go ahead and open Tableau. Okay, let me pull this into the view here and split the screen. So you should be looking at something like this now, right? So in order to connect to Google Sheets, those sheets that I had sent out, we're going to look at go to the server area. We're going to look at Google Sheets connector. Now, if it's not top of the list for you, easily come in here. You can search for it. It's generally in alphabetical order. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Google Sheets. And really what that is going to end up doing is popping up an authentication window. Okay, so obviously, as you can see, I have a couple accounts. I'm actually going to use my individual account so I can work on it like you guys would be working on it on your end. Go ahead and click on the account that has access to the table. You're going to allow access from Tableau to access this table. And now we can basically just close this window. Jump back over to your selected Google Sheet window that has popped up in Tableau, and you're going to look for a table called Public Companies. We're going to connect directly to that table. Let that query. All right, so here we are. This should be the window that everybody sees once you've been connected. Take a look to see what's next on here. Okay. A quick show of hands. I want to make sure we're staying along. You actually do need a Google account. That is correct. Sorry, I should have mentioned that in the beginning. You will need a Google account to actually access this table. All right, so show of hands just really quickly. I was updated at 4:05 a.m.
You are clear to proceed.
I am. All right, excellent. Okay, so now we have our data pane over on Tableau, and you're going to begin to see these different tables in here, right? So I want to take a pause here for a second. You don't necessarily need to follow me down this route. I really want to demonstrate to you, we're going to start getting into joins versus relationships, and I want to show you just a minor difference that there is between joins and relationships, okay? So don't follow me in this next part. I'm going to kind of breeze through this and show you a comparison, okay? So if I want to basically create this table, I'm going to pull up public companies, which we know is the master table, has up-to-date data. The next thing I'm going to do now, this is a little bit different. If we're trying to go old school join style, what you do at this point is actually double click right on that table. It pops open this new window, and this is essentially almost referencing previous versions where now we would create a join in this window, right? So what we're going to do here is create a union. And if you're not familiar with unions, I've tried to demonstrate what exactly a union means. So what is a union? A union is essentially where you take multiple tables and now imagine just stacking them on top of each other. So the tables in this individual company, these individual company tables actually work out really well for a union because all of the columns are exactly the same, so they can all line up and stack on top of each other. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to bring out a new union into the window. And now it doesn't matter what order you put them in as long as you have each of the 6 unique tables that we're going to need by company. And again, you don't need to follow me through this. This is just to illustrate a point here. I'm going to click OK. Now, this is a view that anybody who's used Tableau and connected to data is probably very familiar with. It's creating a join. We can inspect the join here. It's doing inner join on ticker, which is actually the correct way to do it because tickers are unique to a company. So that's exactly right. Now, once I have this join, I'm going to name this join so I don't get confused here. Once we go back and do a relationship, I want to illustrate one additional point here. If I pop open this sheet now and say I want to start building my first sheet and I want to look at company name by, say, share price, right? If I double click share price. Now we know based on the market and our understanding of how companies work, like nobody's share price is going to be $34,000, right? So there's something happening here and we can discover what's happening by looking at the count of each row. If I double click on that, well, this is what's happening. We are having a share price that's being duplicated 252 times, and it's creating a sum of that. So there's two things we could do here at this point. We could change the aggregation of the share price, of course, to max. So it's going to max it per day. And now that it looks accurate. In most scenarios, what you do at this point is actually create an LOD, right? So we would do something like share price LOD. I'm going to just create this really quickly. So we're going to fix this LOD to, let's say, company name and date. And again, as you saw in the window, we're going to maximize the aggregation of share price. And there we go. We have a pretty simple LOD to use the correct level of detail. And I'm going to bring this out into the view. You can see, okay, awesome. We have the exact share price. That required an extra step, right? And you have to have an understanding of LODs. So LODs, and generally speaking, can get pretty complex, right? If you have any experience with these, LODs start nesting into each other and they create this really complex workflow that is sometimes hard to maintain, especially if you need to share stuff with other people. So now that you've seen that, let's take a step back. And this is where I want everybody to join back in. We're going to now explore how to emulate this similar workflow, but we're going to use relationships instead. Okay. So I'm actually going to go ahead and change my data source. You can just use the one that you have in the window. Okay.
On that topic, while it's connecting, Greg,
Yeah.
I know often you'll use a Mac to connect to data sources. Are you using a Mac right now or a PC?
I'm actually using a PC. PC is my standard computer that I go with. Are we having
Yeah.
some difficulties or?
No, we just had someone ask because they mentioned that their data connectors don't quite show up the way that yours are, and they're using 2020.2. So
Interesting.
it might be that you've had a few different ways to show how you connect to data.
Yeah, interesting. We can, is it causing a problem? Like, should we go back to it or is it just different?
Maybe just one quick just recap of that before you dive into the next step
Yeah,
on the
so
level of
the connecting
details.
to data piece?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Which is actually what I just did again. I'm going to go
Okay.
ahead. All right, so let's go ahead and reconnect to data. So I guess if you are in a brand new screen, I'm just going to open Tableau up again, walk through it really quick. Not going to save that. So I'm opening up Tableau 2020.2. It's loading in the background. You can do it, Tableau. You can do it. Here it is. Okay, cool. So again, connecting to the data, we go to the data connection window, open Tableau up. Generally, Google Sheets is going to be under the server. And now we can search for different servers. If you can't find it, go ahead and start typing Google in there and you'll see Google Sheets. We'll click on that. It's going to authenticate in your browser. So it should pop open this window now like this, right? I'm going to go ahead and choose my account. I'm going to allow Tableau Desktop to access my Google account. And now we can pretty much just close this window. And it's going to pop up this next window. So select your Google Sheet. And the one that we're going to use today is called Public Companies. I think it should say my name, like owned by Greg Rossi right here. Go ahead and highlight that and click on Connect. All right, so this is where we should be after we connect. So let us now dive into relationships really quick. Okay, so you saw me do the whole old school join method. Now we're going to take it new school and leverage these new relationships functionalities, which are pretty amazing. So I'm going to pull out public companies. So this is where everyone can follow along now. We have our public companies table. Now remember before, we're still going to create that same union, only this time we're going to just drag it into the view. you're going to see this little thing, which now is referred to as the noodle, come out into the view. It's this orange little like relationship like string here. Just go ahead and drop the union into there. And now we're going to pull in our individual companies table. So pull in AYX, CRM, Tableau, Domo, IBM, Microsoft, and Oracle. So you should have 6 tables all unique in this little union. I'm going to click OK. And now, actually, no, I think this is all happening on this page. Now you're going to see a new window pop up. So edit relationships. Okay, so you can kind of imagine this almost like the way we set up a join, right? So we get to determine how the relationship is being developed between these 2 tables. On this one, it automatically defaulted to ticker, which is exactly what we want. We can add more fields if we want to. This is going to be sufficient. Now we also have this performance option. So just know right out the gate, if you don't know what cardinality is, if you don't know what referential integrity is, you actually don't need to touch any of this stuff. Tableau will try to figure it all out for you. And in my experience, it's done pretty well at doing that. But if you did know cardinality and you wanted to say, hey, this is going to be a one-to-many relationship, go ahead and select that. If you knew your referential integrity, like for example, for this one, it's going to be all records matched. So we could use that if we wanted to. Again, we don't have to do this stuff. Tableau will figure this out, which is really powerful. That's really all we need to do. I'm going to close that out. And now we have a relationship. So before we move into building, I'm actually going to extract this data. I'm sure we have a number of people that are hitting that data source right now, and I don't want to be slowed down by the live feed. So I'm going to extract it. You can choose to do whatever you want to. And then we're going to jump right into sheet 1. Go ahead and save that extract if you've created one.
Yeah, thank you for walking through that again, Greg. It turns out that exact kind of pop-up that is new to 2020.2 about the relationship feature is what someone was asking about. I remember I downloaded it the day it came out and then hopped on a demo, opened it up and thought, oh, Tableau's different. I wasn't prepared. That's shame on me for not beta testing. But it opens up a lot of doors and a lot of capabilities, but it is a slight difference to work from, especially if you're using Tableau all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, so we've opened up our sheet. You're going to notice something different right off the bat. Tableau no longer organizes things into dimensions and measures, just strictly speaking. We instead have things organized by tables. So we've got our dimensions for the public companies tables, the measures for public companies, dimensions for a union table, measures for union table. Once we start creating calculations, they will end up showing up down here, but that is one difference off the bat. The next difference you're going to see is there's no more number of records. What they did now is they added this count field. So essentially what this is going to do is count the number of rows in the table that you're accessing. So it's essentially the same thing, but it's just a count instead of like a sum of records, right? So just a quick tip right there. So now I'm going to do is create the same thing that I created when I used the join. So I'm going to pull company names out to columns, and I'm just going to go ahead and double click on share price. Now you can see we don't even need an LOD anymore. Life has been simplified for us. So no more complex LODs. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be use cases where you're going to need LODs if you're doing complex work, but the really powerful feature of relationships is that it's really starting to simplify this analysis, this calculation piece for us. And for people that are new to Tableau, they're going to like it even more now because we don't have to worry about these stinking LODs that drive people crazy. Okay.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for that. It's something that I found level of detail expressions were very helpful, but very kind of situationally appropriate. And so it kind of became a piece of knowledge I didn't pick up until I absolutely needed it, which is sometimes the most frustrating time to learn something new. Is whenever you're up against a deadline.
And now there's a chance you may never need to use them again.
Because part of it was a level of detail expression. So one of the ways I used it was to kind of fix the aggregation point at which Tableau was going to be pulling data. Working with it on the relationship side, it's so much easier and more sustainable.
Yes, exactly. So that's what we're going to touch on for relationships today. If you have additional questions and you want to learn more about it, in the PowerPoint, I actually put this little link that sends you to like more documentation. I know they have training videos. This is like a huge new topic that it's going to take people time to get used to. So Tableau's putting a lot of work into making it understandable for people. So let's get in now to the building of the sheets. So this first sheet we're going to create, which we've already started to, is going to be called the share price KPI. And again, you can name these what you want to later. This is what I'm going to use right now. Share price KPI. As you see, we've already started building this thing here. All right, so let's build the view. Drag share price to text and format the numbers appropriately. So it's already on text, as you saw. All you need to do is double click on it. It probably would be helpful to format these as currencies because that's really what they are. So I'm going to right click on share price and I'm going to default properties, number format. That's going to pop up this window here that many are probably familiar with. I'm going to do a currency standard should be fine for this use case. So currency standard, and now we have our dollar amount, which at the end of the day is going to make way more sense than just, a float with a decimal.
Mhm.
The next bit we're going to do here is we're going to create a percent change positive. So compared to yesterday's share price, has it changed positively? And we're also going to create a percent change negative measure. And you'll see the reason why we're creating two. The reason we're creating two is because we want to end up in a place where we have essentially a red version and a green version of the share price. And this will actually enable us to do this. And I'll show you exactly what I mean. This will probably make more sense once we make them. So let's go ahead and create a calculation. I'm going to call this percent change positive. And I try to make this as easy as possible. If you have the PowerPoint, you can just literally come in here, copy, and paste it into the window. That should work out just fine. Say OK. And I'm going to create another calculation that says percent change negative. So we have our positive versions, our negative versions. Of course, what this means, if the percent change is less than 0, then show me the percent change. So I promise it's going to make more sense once I drag these into the view. Just trust me on this one. The last thing we're going to do here is actually format these pills. So the formatting is going to be a little strange for these pills, mainly because in the Google sheet, these are actually already formatted as percentages. So really all we need to do is go to default properties, number format. We're actually going to use a number, a custom number. I'm going to change it to 1 decimal place, and then I'm going to add a percent suffix at the end of that. Again, the reason we're doing this is because in the Google Sheet, we've already formatted that data correctly. So we're not going to use percentage because what that'll do is it'll times it by 100. You'll get this blown out number that doesn't make sense, right? Click OK. I'm going to do the same thing with positive. 1 decimal place, percentage, click OK. All right, so now what we're going to do is drop both of those measures onto text, and you'll see that they're starting to show up. Interestingly enough, apparently all these stocks from yesterday have gone down a little bit, so you're not even seeing the positive one show up. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is, let's see, we've dropped the measures on text, so we're up to number 5. We're going to create a company selector parameter. So what this is going to do is allow us to do this highlighting of marks and text feature. And I'll show you what that means in the final dashboard. Do you see this, how this is a blue text and these are black? If I go ahead and select this, sorry, it needs to refresh. Select it. Do you see how now this is blue? It's in highlight. That's what this parameter is going to allow us to do. So let's go ahead and build that really quick.
Yeah, and for this team, I reposted the link to the Tableau public workbook in the chat. So if you're kind of eager to skip ahead and see what final product looks like, that's the link to the public workbook too.
And I will also mention, if you're a speed demon at this stuff and you want to go ahead of me and this presentation, feel free to do that too. So, all right, so what we're going to call this is company selector. So I created a new parameter. Okay. And what we're going to do is make this a string, and we're going to change this to a list. And we're going to add values from company name. So really what we're just doing is creating a company name selector parameter. All right. I'm going to click OK on that. Now, in order to create that highlighting functionality, we actually have to create a couple additional calculations. So this one calculation I'm going to create is called the company name selector. It's going to be a Boolean. And this is going to be very important for everything we do in the rest of the workbook. So company name selector. And really all this is going to say is, and you can copy it from here if you want to, but really all it is company name equals company selector. Okay, pretty standard. That's all we need to do there. And again, if this is confusing, just trust me on this one. It's going to make a lot of sense when we get done with this work, with this sheet. We're going to create two more measures, almost like we did with these percent change. We're going to do a highlight text measure, and we're going to do a normal company name text measure. So create a calculated field. Let's call that highlight company name. And again, feel free to just come on over here, copy and paste. Okay, if company name selector is true, then give me the company name. Click OK. And then one additional calculation. And this one is going to be called, I'm going to name this normal company name. And if you're following along with the names that I'm naming them, it's going to be a lot easier just because of this copy and paste method that I'm using. Normal company name. So if company name selector is false, then give me the company name too. But this time we're not going to highlight it. So I'm going to click OK. All right, we're down to nearly our last stage here. Now what we're going to do is grab both of those and drag them to text, highlight company name on text, normal company name on text. And now we're going to edit the text box. So go ahead and click on text, edit the label. And I've kind of already, if you have the PowerPoint, I've already formatted it correctly for you here. So go ahead and copy that. And
including the really big share price in the middle.
Including all of it, absolutely. And you'll see why that's important. I'm going to go ahead and paste it in here. Now, before we move on, you're seeing a lot of weird duplicate things here. I have normal company, highlight. What does this mean? Well, this is going to allow us to highlight it in different colors. So select the highlighted company name and choose a highlighting color that you prefer. I actually love this electric blue. That's what I'm going to go with here. Share price, we're going to keep the same. Now, in the finance world, when we talk about positives and negatives, generally everybody always wants to see positive changes in green, negative changes in red. Now, I know that's not the best for colorblind and adaptability, that kind of stuff, but that's what we're going to go with today.
Yeah, but Tableau does have the orange-blue color palettes. You can also select whatever color you'd like.
They have the colorblind palette. If you're wondering, the inverse, like the alternates to use, that is exactly right. Blue is going to be for green, orange is going to be for red. Right. Okay, so basically what we're seeing here now is a pretty decent KPI board. I'm probably going to hide this company names header. I may even go into text, and I want to center this stuff, so I'll put it right in the middle. Middle, that's all good. I'll probably change this to entire view. And there we go, we have our KPI board. All right, so that is sheet one. I'm going to take a pause here and show of hands when you feel like you're ready to move on. Let's see what we're doing, how we're doing on time.
Wow,
okay,
look at those hands blowing up. You guys are awesome.
Love to hear.
Well done. Oh, wow. Yeah, I think we can move forward. And also just a quick reminder, we are recording this. I already sent out an email just to everyone that kind of said they'd be attending the meeting. You have the PowerPoint and links to some of this. We'll also be sending this as a recap too. So if you are one of those not raising your hands because you'd like a little more time, we will be sharing the recording as well. So you can also use this as a way to kind of go through. Yeah, so the hands-on workshops, we want you to be able to kind of move along. If you find yourself stuck, you can also go to that Tableau public dashboard, download it, and kind of walk backwards and even just see how some of these things look as they're built out. But quick reminder, in order for it to work, if you do just go to the public and download the workbook, you'll need 2020.2 simply because it's taking advantage of that new relationship feature that's a 2020.2 feature, as opposed to the level of detail expressions that Greg showed at the beginning of this. Just keep that in mind, but outside of that, you are free to go forward.
Amazing. Let's keep on rolling then.
Well done, Rossi.
All right, we're on to sheet 2 now. And this is going to be a fun one because this is where we start to begin messing with set controls, which is another new feature. So this is what it's going to ultimately look like in the end. Let's walk through how to make that. Let's go ahead and create a new sheet. And I guess I'm going to call it pretty much what I called it in here, which is proportional trading volume, because that's really what we're going to be showing here. Proportional trading volume. Okay. Next, let's get into some set controls. All right. All right, so first I would like to demonstrate to you how you can now use sets as essentially quick filters, which is amazing. Actually, you know what? Let's jump back to the KPI. I just realized that this is where we're going to first start using this. So jump on back to the KPI sheet. We're going to use the sets as a quick filter here first. So what we're going to do is go up to company name, right click on it. We're going to create a set. Okay. And I guess we can call this company set. And essentially all we're going to do is select all of them, because this is going to allow, you could specialize this if you have a different use case, but we're going to make sure that all the companies are going to be included in the set as we move on. If you had specific sets you wanted to build off of based on different companies, obviously that's an option too. Here's what we're going to do for now. Add all members, click OK. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add company set to the filter shell. So bring this up to filters. Okay. So now historically speaking, when you went to click on this, you could do show filter, but really what is that going to do? It's going to show us, historically speaking, and it would show you some kind of in and out. But now what you can do is actually, I'm going to hide this card and show you probably a better way to go about this. You can actually come right over to the set in the data pane, right click, and you can do show set. Boom. And now we have this new functionality where we can actually use this set. We can edit it like a filter. I mean, I can make this a multi-value dropdown if I wanted to. And really all this is doing is adding and removing members from that set we just created. So pretty powerful stuff. We're going to leverage this throughout the rest of the workbook as we continue building stuff out. All right. So now that that's on that sheet, let's jump back over to our proportional trading volume. So this is where we're going to get into proportional highlighting, which is a concept that was previously available, but you had to kind of do some tricky things to get it to work the way you wanted to. Create a new sheet, proportional trading volume. We're going to drag volume, as you could guess, on 2 columns. Okay, create a bar like that, pretty standard. The next thing we're going to do is drag company set, so that set we just created, to the color shelf. Okay. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to drag volume to text to kind of give it a label. So this is like a pretty crazy number. What I want to do is format that number a little bit to put it in the millions maybe. So I'd go down to volume. I'm going to default properties, number format. I'm going to do a custom number. I'll maybe do 1 decimal and then create the millions place. That should normalize it a little bit for us. Yeah, that looks good to me. Okay. Where did we leave off? Or format the volume pill there. Okay, let's see, where do we leave? Drag volume to columns, format the pill volume, format color. Okay, cool. So now we can begin seeing, let's go ahead and open up that show set again. Now, as you'll notice, as we start deselecting things, we're creating this proportion, right? So based on the members of the set that are in the view is creating the proportion of the volume that we're able to view. So again, this is what is referred to as proportional highlighting. And one of the things I may do here, because we're generally reading left to right, I think I'm going to switch my out. I'm going to drag my out above, so that's on the outside. The other thing I'll probably do here is adjust the color. I really like that electric blue, so I'll probably stick with that. Apply that. And the last thing I'll probably do is, let's see, make this an entire view. Okay. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple. That is the highlights of the new set controls features that we have. There's a nice little blog post I've included here on the slide. Go ahead and click on that. It talks about most of the features we just went through. I think maybe there's one additional thing on there, but yeah, that is a really powerful feature that we're going to continue to leverage throughout the rest of the workbook here. I'm going to give a pause here. Show of hands when you're ready to move on, and we'll get on to our next sheet.
It is a race. Our previous dashboard builders that showcase content are normally first to actually hit that. It looks like we can move forward. One quick thing as you move forward in the presentation, just because I called out the 2020.2 that you would need this to work. If you have an older version of server in your environment, so if you're working with 2020.1 or older, when you try to publish a workbook, Tableau is going to warn you that it'll be downgraded. For things that aren't 2020.2 specific, that shouldn't be a problem. But if you're leveraging a lot of what Greg is showing you, either with relationships or some of these new features using sets or metrics or additional things like that, because that requires 2020.2 to work, I wouldn't advise trying to publish that to an older version of server, as it might downgrade and inadvertently break something. So the good news is you can have both versions of desktop installed. So you can continue to develop and publish in 2020.1 and then play and evaluate 2020.2. And if you need help making a case to your IT team for upgrading, please contact us and we're happy to help you do that. Yeah, keep going, Greg. Well done, everyone.
All right, let's move on to sheet 3 here. We're going to be looking at now share price trends. Ultimately, this is what it's going to look like. So let's get into building. Let's add a new sheet. I'm going to call this share price trend. Okay, so we're going to first start by dragging the date from the union table, so down here, onto the column shelf. We're actually going to turn this into an exact date because we want to create this time series here, right? So change that to exact date. The next thing we're going to do is drag close, which again is referring to the closing price of a share based on a given day. We're going to drag this to rows. There we go, we have an aggregate here, and then we're also going to drag it to the detail shelf. And you'll see why later, why we need to do that. We're going to drag company name also to detail shelf. That's going to start splitting out into the different companies, right? We're going to drag company name selector. Now this is something we created early on in the beginning, is that Boolean. We're going to drag that to color and size. Color. We're also going to drag it to size. So this is looking a little chunky to me. I may turn this like size down a little bit, probably put it to like right there. That way there's some discrepancy, but it's not like really blowing the line out. The other thing I'll probably do is edit the color. Again, I really liked that electric blue. So for true, this is going to be your highlight color. And then I may change this to like, I really like black is really clean. So I think I'll probably use that. Okay, so we've got that in place there. Now the last thing we're going to do here, of course, is drag company set to the filter shelf. And that's going to allow us again to add, let's see, show set. Add these different companies to the set, remove them from the set, however we want to analyze this data, right? So we're going to do a couple additional things while we're here. Now, to make this a little bit more dynamic, I want to create a date range parameter that allows us to swap between 1 month, 6 months, and showing the max time frame. This is going to just make it more dynamic, allow you to drill into places. So what we're going to do is create a new parameter, and I'm going to call this date range. And this is going to be a string. And I'm going to actually use a list. So these are going to be these exact things that I explained here. 1 month, tab it over, make sure it's in both sides, 6 months. And then we're also going to do a max, which is going to be the entire data set. That should be good for now. Once you have that created, press OK. Now we're going to create an additional calculation that references that parameter. So this is going to be actually a case statement. So create a calculated field. I'm going to name this one date calcs. And as you can see here on the PowerPoint, if you have it, I actually laid out the formula exactly as you needed it to. Go ahead and copy, paste that right into here. And just really quickly to describe what's going on here. It's a case statement. So based on this parameter, when you select 1 month, then show me the date greater than today minus 31, so 31 days ago, all the way to or equal to today. So it's going to show us the last month, right? Same thing for 6 months. So it's looking 183 days back to today. And then max, of course, is everything up and including today. All right. So that's just an explanation of that. Go ahead and click OK. And that's creating a Boolean. Let's go ahead and drag that onto the filter shelf. And we're going to say true. Apply. All right. So you probably saw that this changed. Let's expose our date range parameter to make sure that this works. 1 month, 6 months, max. Excellent, we got it all in there. I'm gonna probably leave it on max for now. Now we're gonna do 2 additional parameters, and really this is just a style thing. So as you can probably see in this end example, there's like these little crosshairs, right? Which is pretty typical for trading and share prices. So what it'll do is if I click on a point, it shows you that crosshair. It'll give you the date of the point you selected and also the close price. So we're going to go ahead and create parameters to make that possible. So we're going to create a new parameter. This is going to be called Let's name this close price parameter. Okay, everything else is pretty much going to stay exactly the same. It's a float. We can use all values. Great. Create another parameter here. This is going to be selected date parameter. Okay, and this one, as you could probably guess, we're going to use a date. We're going to leave it to all for now. That should be good to go. Now what we're going to do is add some reference lines to reference those parameters now. Okay, so reference lines can be found in the analytics pane. We have data, we have analytics. Jump over to analytics. We're going to grab a reference line from here, drag it into the view, drop reference line. Let's start with our close price. We want it to go across the entire table, drop it right in there. It's going to pop open this menu. I'm going to select that parameter we just created. For label, I'll probably use value. Tooltip can be automatic. I'm going to actually make this dotted right here to make it look a little cooler, and click OK. We're going to do the same exact thing, only this time for the date. Table, date. I'm going to select that date parameter we just created. Value, automatic. I'll make it this one dotted as well. All right. And there we have our share price trend. Okay, so this is not going to be moving yet. The way we get to actually leverage these parameters is by creating dashboard actions, which is going to come at the end. So before I move on, I'm just going to take a quick pause. Show of hands. Who's ready to move on?
Yeah, I have a few questions that came in.
Yeah.
And some of it is with what you just showed, and some is kind of previously. So first, kind of taking just a little bit of a step back, whenever you did the show sets and dropping something on a filter, showing the sets is actually just showing kind of what is in and out and showing the filter itself. When you dropped it onto the filter, that's where it actually came into play. Or is there something else that you did there?
So it's a good question. That is actually exactly what I did. So I dropped it under the filter shelf so that it functions similarly to a filter. Now, the cool thing about sets is regardless of where they are in the workbook, this set controller is going to influence them. So you're going to see if we throw the set on color, even if it's not on filter shelf, it's still going to control something in the view because it's a set that we've created. And I think I may have a point to illustrate that a little bit. But I hope that makes sense. Like, it's functioning similar to a filter if you put it on the filter shelf, but sets can be basically dropped anywhere into the view. And with this controller, we can essentially control them from wherever they are on the view.
Okay.
So really, just to maybe illustrate this really quick, what I could do is drop this on color. And now it's kind of controlling it the same. Oh, I guess I duplicated that. Right, show filter. So now we're controlling as an in and out instead, right?
Yeah.
So
if you just right click and say show filter, it's going to do the Boolean in out kind of true false mechanism. Whereas if you drag it onto the filter shelf, it's actually going to provide the set values for you to
exactly
filter
right.
on.
Exactly
Wonderful. Right. And then we had a question about on the in and out, how is that, what is the sort? So it looks like it might just automatically be sorting based on alphabetical sort. Is there some other sort happening
The in and out, maybe we could elaborate on that a little bit. What do you mean by sort?
Yeah, that is a good question for Keith. Maybe that is something that during Q&A we chat about.
Yeah.
Okay, well then final, and then we'll move forward. Just to kind of recap, because you're showing a lot of, oh good, awesome. A lot of good things around parameters. Maybe just kind of recapping, just whenever I first started working with parameters, there's kind of, and this is what you're showing very well, Greg. Step one, you create the parameter just to say, this is what I would like to control things. Pulling it onto the view is what actually brings the parameter out. There's still a third step, whether that is either a measure that controls it or what you're going to be showing with dashboard actions that then actually tells this parameter what to do. So kind of step one is, what are the values I'm going to choose? Pulling it onto the view, but it won't actually do anything or affect anything until that third step of what like actions do my choices have.
Exactly. It's almost like a variable that we need to reference in some type of measure to give it a value, give it power, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Well, then let's keep pressing forward. We have a lot of people
ready to go. Okay, we're on to our last sheet, guys. And this one is a tabular looking sheet. I'll say this from experience. If you walk into a finance meeting and you don't have some kind of crosstab on your dashboard, you're going to be fed to the lions. That's at least been my experience. So hopefully if anybody's in the finance sector, you know what I mean. Okay, let's go ahead and get building here. I'm going to create a new sheet. This one is going to be called company valuation details. So this is all the some measures that you could use to determine the value of a company. That's essentially what that means, right? Okay, so as you saw, it was a pretty tabular view right here. We're going to drag company name onto rows. We're going to drag 52-week open, which I think is, now again, what is 52-week open? That means a year ago today, the stock opened, on this particular day, this was the opening price, right? I'm going to change that to discrete because we're making a little tabular thing here. 52-week high, I'm also going to bring out. And you can add whatever metrics you want to in here. These are the ones that I'm going to bring in. And then what do we have here? 52-week low as well. Okay. Change those all to discrete. And now the one measure we are going to bring out is going to be market cap. So market cap is here. I'm going to drag that onto columns. We're going to get these bars now, which is great. Now I'm going to sort this by, descending. Now, one thing you'll notice right off the bat here, if you present this to people, this has been my general experience. If you try to present this to people, they're going to start digging into the details and going to say, well, why are the column headers like for these ones up here, but this one's down here? It's a very common complaint that I experience in the finance realm. So is there a way to bring this column header to the top? And the answer is yes. There's an actually pretty easy way to do that. And I'm going to show you how. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this market cap, we're going to duplicate it. So here's a little hotkey trick. If you control click, and I think maybe it's command on Mac, control click, drag the pill, it's going to duplicate it. The next thing we're going to do is dual axis these two things. So let's create a dual axis. Okay. So now we have on top and on bottom. So now you would think, I just want to hide this header, right? So go ahead and click on it, show header. Well, now they all hid. What do I do about that? Why can't I just hide, the bottom one? Well, there is a way around that actually too. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit this axis. So right click, edit axis. I'm actually going to straight up just delete the title. I'm going to go to tick marks and I'm going to just turn everything to none. Okay. That is completely removed. The bottom one there. Now I'm going to do the same thing, edit axis on the top. This time I'm only going to delete the tick marks. And there's a quick tip on how to get a header name at the top so you can align with the rest of your table. Okay, so you noticed a few strange things here. These got turned into dots when I dual axis this. I'm going to go to all over here, turn these back to bars. Maybe I'll control click, drag this to color so we can color this. I'll probably choose black because I think it's super clean. Let's go ahead and do that. Again, this can be whatever color you want it to be. This is just what I'm going to use right now. It looks like we have another suggestion here. Andrea saying, you can also type market cap into single quotes and columns and it will become a header. That is actually really true too. So the reason why, and I'll explain why I do it the way that I do it here, is because if I continue to try to build out measures into this top row, which oftentimes I do, I can show an example. If you want to stick around afterwards, I can show an example of this. But generally, when I create crosstabs, I like them to be very dynamic in terms of I would want a shape in this one to show change over time. I want a bar in this one. I want to color this one. And once you start getting into that realm, it becomes a lot more sophisticated. So if people want to stick around, I'm happy to show that at the end. It's just a little bit more advanced. Because of the sake of time, I'm going to keep rolling here. So I think that's pretty much what we have. Oh, the last thing here, of course, is again dragging this to filter shelf company set. Okay, as you probably have noticed throughout this workshop, I haven't messed with the tooltips at all. They're probably going to be pretty crazy if you hover over them. So feel free to go back and do that later. It takes a lot of time. So we're going to skip over that. Okay, so I'm going to take a pause there, take a breath. How's everybody doing? Show of hands.
It's good. You have a core crew keeping up. It's wonderful. And by the way, we acknowledge in this hands-on session, part of the reason we're recording it, that Greg did a great job of having a step-by-step PowerPoint to pair with the data set and the public biz. We know it's a lot to cover. We want you to have something meaty to kind of dig into. So it is okay if you're not raising your hand right now. This information is going to be available for you to also consume at your leisure.
This is a lot.
It
Most
is.
Tableau
But
trainings are fire hoses, so.
yeah, and this is the other thing is for those that don't have the 2020.2, there are still some features around things like the case statements, working with parameters. You can do that with as far back as Tableau 8.3. These are things that you can leverage. So keep in mind, regardless of what version you're on, we want to make sure for those new to Tableau, you learn some tips and tricks. For those that have been in Tableau quite a while and are seasoned, hopefully you're able to get a little bit inspired about maybe some new things that you can start to leverage. So keep going, Rossi, to the
Awesome.
dashboard stage.
All right, we're on to the magic part here, which is the dashboard. I'm going to go ahead and create a new dashboard. And ultimately, of course, this is what it's going to look like. So let's get into building this thing. All right, so I'm going to first start general sizing. I actually may need to shift away from this for a second. Let me see if I can shrink this and make it just zoomed in a little bit. Okay. So I generally am going to use, I tend to stick into like the 13 by 900 range. Again, this is really subjective, whatever you want to make it. Again, dashboarding, super subjective. You can make anything you want to make. I'm just going to show you mine. I'll hopefully give you a few tips along the way here. Okay, 1300 by 900 is the sizing that I'm going to choose. We're going to start by bringing out a vertical container for the content, and I'm going to bring out a horizontal container for the title. I'm going to take a text box and drag that into the container. So we'll call this, I'm going to call it Market Watch. And Tableau 2020.2. Let's put this at maybe like, I don't know, 18-point font. Maybe I'll make it semi-bold. I'm actually probably going to make the top bar black, as you could see in the last thing, so I'll make this white. And then I'll double click to grab the horizontal container. Turn that maybe like this color matte a little bit here. And there we go. We have our title bar, pretty standard. All right, so now let's go ahead and start bringing our sheets out. So what I'm going to do is drop my trend line in here. And I'm also going to drop my KPI board right above that. So they're kind of stacked on top of each other here. Let's give that some room to breathe. Okay, there we go. I'm going to hide my title for the trends, and maybe I'll call this like share price versus yesterday close. Just a little descriptive so people know what they're looking at. I'm actually going to turn this kind of into a legend so they know that this is colors referring to these things here. I'm going to apply that. Then I'm going to format the title. Change this into maybe like second grade down or something like that. So that looks good to me. You see this bar is building up over here. I'm really not going to worry about this yet. The next thing I'm going to do is grab a horizontal container, drag that to the bottom. This is where we're going to contain our two other charts that we made. Make it a little smaller. I'm going to first drag in the cross tab, and then I'm going to also drag in my proportional highlighting here. I'll double click this, grab the horizontal container, right click, distribute the contents evenly. Again, I may do something where I format the titles here to be shaded gray so that they really stand out. And you know what you're looking at. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to delete this container over here for now. We're going to use some of this stuff, but I'm going to show you something else before that. So there's this new trend going around. I don't know if you guys have noticed where people are really starting to put a lot of design work into dashboards. They're creating this like KPI like cards that look like they're really fancy looking. They have like these shadows on them. It looks really cool. I'm all about it. I want to show you a quick and dirty way of creating that in Tableau without having to use like a custom like background that you created in Illustrator, right? So let's quickly create like this card that looks like it has a drop shadow on it. So I'm going to first of all make sure that none of my containers have any outer padding. Let's turn these to 0. I'm going to do that across all of them. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is essentially double click so I have I think what I'm gonna do is section this one together and then section these two separately. So I've grabbed the entire vertical that these two fall in, and I'm going to add a border. So I'd probably choose like third gray down. That seems to be noticeable. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is actually bring out another vertical container. I'm gonna drop that towards the top, and we're gonna put this container with everything in it inside of that. So it's almost like a vertical and a vertical at this point, right? Double click on that so you grab the second vertical. I'm going to add another border. Maybe I'll choose like third line in, make it almost like a shade color there, right? And then I'm going to add some outer padding as well, maybe like a 4. And there we go. You're starting to see almost, and feel free to tune this however you want to. This is generally the style that I go with. It almost creates like an edge on the end and then like a little bit of a shadow. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing with these. So again, select the sheet, add a dark gray border of some sort, bring out another vertical container. I'm going to go ahead and drop this into here, double click and grab that container. Add a thicker line border, a lighter gray, and then also add some padding to give it some space. And last one here, you're going to do third one in, vertical container, drop this version into there, double click, let's add our shadow. Okay, and then our padding. Okay, so let me see if I can blow this up so we can take a look. So as you can see, we almost have like these little cards, right, that have these little drop shadows. Feel free to mess with that. There's more advanced ways of doing that. For the sake of time, this is what we're going to go with for right now. Create some emphasis, to create some space so I can see exactly what I'm looking at. It helps end users really begin to understand, you know, what they're looking at. The next bit here, what I'm going to do is begin showing my parameters and filters, the ones that I need to. So the first thing we're going to do, and technically it's a set, right? So here's another new function here for set controls. I come into sets, show that company set. And there we go. I'm going to actually make this a multiple value dropdown. Let's create some space in this header so I can put it up here. Drop it right in there. Perfect. And the last one we're going to add is, remember how we created a parameter to adjust the date on this trend? So click any sheet, go down to parameters. We're going to bring out date range. And that should just throw it right in there already. Let's make that look a little nicer. All right, we have our sets. We have our date range parameter. The next thing I'm going to do is turn animations on. So if you haven't messed with this yet, really cool feature that was added actually last version. You're going to go right up to format. We're going to go down to animations. It's going to pop up the second window over here. I'm going to turn them on. Now there's a couple settings. We see the duration, how long you want the animation to take. You can do it either sequentially or simultaneously. I'm going to leave everything default settings. I think that's fine. Go ahead and close it. And now to test that, I'm going to go to my date range. There we go. Now we have some smooth motion there. Looks good. Okay, we are basically on to the last step of this dashboard, which is going to be adding dashboard actions. Okay, you ready? We are going to go up to dashboards. We are going to click on actions. Now the first action I'm going to add is a highlight feature. So basically, when I click on one of these companies, I want it to highlight that exact company down in this chart. So let's go ahead and add an action, add a highlighter. And again, this is going to be the KPI, right? The source is going to be KPI. And then the target sheet is going to be the company valuation details. I'm going to leave it on select. All fields is fine. You can pretty much call this whatever you want to. I'm just going to leave it standard. Let's see if that worked. Yep, there it is. You see how it's highlighting those companies down below now. So a lot of the actions are going to be driven by you selecting a company. All right, the next action we're going to add is going to be, you remember how I created these little like reference lines in here? Let's add some actions to target those reference lines now, okay? And if I see a little window in the chat, it's hard to see. Maybe I can bring this back into the view here. Yeah, this is hard to see. Let me see if I can, for me, I'm gonna be squished, but feel free to do what you can on your side. All right, so we're gonna do a change parameter action, right? So I'm gonna go actions, add action, change parameter. And for this one, we are actually going to be targeting the close price reference. So again, this is going to be only for the trend. It's going to be on select. I'm going to name this probably close price reference. The target parameter, again, is going to be the close price parameter. And the field is going to be the sum of close. Okay. Aggregation is sum. That's what it's already set to. That looks good. Let's make sure it worked. There it is. See that little close price? Perfect. Okay. Now let's add one for the other axis here. Add actions. Change parameter value. Again, we're doing the trend. This one I'm going to call date reference. We're going to target the selected date parameter. We only have one option in here, no aggregation, that's fine. Go ahead and click OK. Okay, now we should have a crosshair. There it is. So you see these a lot on actual trading dashboards out in the world. We could actually set these to highlight, so when you scroll around, it moves with your mouse. The only issue with that is when you go to publish it up to a server, anytime you scroll on the dashboard, it has to query, so it actually creates a little bit of a lag. So I'd highly recommend just sticking with clicking. Okay. All right, I think we have one more parameter action, and this is going to bring it all together for us. Let's add one more action. Add action, change parameter value. Okay, so it's going to be the last one on here. And this is going to be the company selector. So this is what's going to drive the highlighting feature you see on the company names. It's going to change the color of the line. So company selector, we're going to be targeting both the KPI and the trend for this one. We're going to do company selector. The field is actually going to be company name. No aggregation, leave it on select, click OK. And that should do it for us. So let's go ahead and see if it worked. There it is. So notice how anytime I select a company, it changes the color of the name. It's also changing the color of the line. And we can come in here, we can click to find more details out about this. This also changes color of the name. We have sets that we could use up here to include companies in the view. This is almost like a wallet at this point, right? Like total volume in your wallet. And that, my friends, is going to be our dashboard. Now, the last thing we have to do here is actually show metrics. And that's going to hopefully round it out. I'm going to take a quick pause and check on time, how much time we have. Looks like we have a few more minutes.
We have a few more minutes. And I am going to be answering this too, but some of the features that we're showing are 2020.2. The parameter actions that Rossi just showed you, I believe actually came out in a 2019 release.
It did, yep.
So
that is an older feature.
Yeah.
Yep. So if everybody's set, this is not something you need to follow along with. I'm just going to quickly show you. Metrics is a pretty easy thing to demonstrate. I'm going to actually go so say we built this dashboard out, right? We publish this up to Tableau server, Tableau online. Now we want to go in there and create this new feature, metrics, which I think is actually really awesome. Let me go, I'm signing into my server on the other side so we can really demonstrate this point. Okay, so say I'm in Tableau Online, I published this dashboard up. Now say I am very interested in just keeping tabs on, well, I'm interested in Salesforce, right? So I'm interested in keeping tabs on the share price over time. So I could, and only that. If I click on this share price point, I can actually go, there's this new feature in the toolbar, metrics right here. Click on that, and it pretty much has done the work for us already. So this is essentially what it's going to look like. There's the share price, there's the trend over time. You can name it whatever you want to. You could put a description in there. You could change the measure. So say I actually clicked on this, it has two measures on it. It allows you to select the measure you want to create a metric on. I'm going to just leave it on this for now. And then all we need to do at that point is click create. Of course, I've already done that, as you can see. Now, where the heck did it go? So what we do is we can go back to the folder where the view is saved, and there's this new tab in here, connected metrics. You go ahead and click on that, and there is our metric. Super useful, and it's also mobile ready, so it's like really easy to use on a phone. And that my friends, is metrics.
Well done. Just to kind of double click on that really quickly, for those looking for practical applications of metrics, the beauty of if someone creates a really robust dashboard, but you actually only care about one or two pieces of it, this is how you can actually start to cherry pick the actual segments that you truly care about and pull out specific metrics from 2, 3, 4, 5 dozens of dashboards and almost create it kind of like a series of your own KPIs based on what's being created in the organization. This is something that what Rossi is showing you is happening on Tableau Online or server. So earlier when we talked about 2020.2, a lot of it's been in desktop. This is also something that you would want to make sure your server is on version 2020.2. If you're on online, you've already been automatically upgraded.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Now, that was the workshop. I mean, that's everything that I have included in here today. If you guys have additional questions, I'm always happy to answer them. Also, you did it. Great work, of course. Feel free to send me an email. I actually have reserved the next up until 5 p.m. So if people are really interested in this stuff and want to stick around and want to learn more about this, I'm happy to share my time to talk through some of these use cases.
Yeah, probably the biggest question. So thank you so much, Greg. That was phenomenal. It was a lot to cover in such a small time. I'm very glad we recorded it and that you also took the time to write it out in a deck too, complete with data source and final product. So thank you. It was wonderful. Probably the biggest things that we're getting a lot of questions on are around API calls or just querying the data in general. If the data changes quite quickly, how do you capture those changes to actually look at changes over time? If the data is updating frequently, can you also talk a little bit? We have somebody who's asked, I'm new to using APIs, find them fascinating. Your experience in working with APIs, do they tend to work all the same? Are there any best practices around working with these?
Those are good questions, and I'm actually going to start with that last question because no, they do not work all the same. And I think that kind of covers the next bit there, which was how do I, look at change over time? Essentially, if you've noticed in Google Sheets, that's the reason I structure the tables that way is to track those different things over time. Basically, the one master sheet is a live feed that I think has maybe about a 20-minute delay with regard to the actual market. So if you're considering being a day trader using this dashboard, I don't suggest it. There's probably a better way to do that. But it will keep it up to date on that live feed. And it's basically all, like I said, APIs are all different. So it really depends on programmatically what the source allows you to pull. And also how the APIs are structured, how the data is structured that you're pulling from the API. I'm happy to do a deeper dive into the actual Google Sheet if that would be helpful to people. I don't know where to start there.
I would say for anything else, just because, again, oh yeah, people are saying yes. So probably what we'll do now that we're actually up on like the official end time is we might just keep the recording going just so anyone who has questions will do that. We'll keep the meeting live. But for those of us who maybe need to hop because they had a hard stop at 4:30, quick thing for this bigger, broader group. Oh, and thank you. You actually have a fan, Greg, saying this might be one of the best tug presentations they've ever seen. Oh, that's wonderful.
I don't know how much that means to me. That's
a lot. You put a ton of work into this, so thank you. It's wonderful. So for the rest of the group that is still on, before we jump into kind of this individual Q&A, in which I'll try to see the best I can to my host abilities to unmute mics, and maybe we can just start to have conversations. For the larger group, our tug, we have set it up so that we meet virtually the first Thursday of every month, with the first Thursday of July also being around the same time as the 4th of July weekend. We're actually going to be talking about, because that first Thursday would be July 2nd, the TUG Advisory Council. We're going to be meeting on June the 10th to decide if we're actually going to keep the TUG that first Thursday, if we're going to move it to the week after. So normally we like to tell you when the next meeting is going to be. Unfortunately today, just because of this upcoming holiday, we will let you guys know via email. The good news is whenever we decide that next week, we will let everyone on this call and everyone on the list know ASAP.
Hey,
So,
Whitney.
oh yeah, William, go ahead.
Yeah, I think right now we are shooting for the 9th.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
But yeah, we could definitely confirm that. But I think just with it being the holiday,
Yeah.
we are going to try to do the 9th. So, but we will
Yeah.
confirm.
Yeah, July 9th. And as soon as we have that, I would assume everyone got here because they received an email. There also is a wonderful tug page on Tableau's website where the community can get together and discuss. But we will also continue to keep everyone updated. So July 9th. Yeah. And so with that, we'll conclude kind of the formal tug presentation and we'll start getting to a lot of these Q&As that are coming in. I will, as I'm trying to figure out how to unmute mics so people can actually just talk with Greg, I'm going to start asking the questions for him to answer. But if anyone needs to hop off, go ahead. We'll keep the recording live to capture all this information. But thank you everyone for joining and for following along. You should also be very proud of yourselves for doing something really complex in a really short time with a brand new release. So have a wonderful rest of the week.
That was complex. Great work, everybody.
Yeah, great work. All right. So with that, we have had a lot of questions come in.
It's like a lot have to do with the APIs, which is
A
a
lot
very
has to do with
complex.
APIs.
It's a very complex and interesting topic. Okay, so.
Yeah. So first, so APIs is kind of one topic. There are a couple smaller, maybe easier things to tackle before we jump into APIs.
Yeah,
and I don't want this down too long. So we'll say maybe like the next 20 minutes. Then outside of that, they have your contact information and could just reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Directly.
Feel free to reach out to me directly.
Yeah. So just because we talked about like actions really quickly, this should be a very quick one to address.
Yes.
Millie, thank you for asking this question. Parameter actions, how are they different from regular filter and other dashboard actions?
That's a good question. So really the main differentiator between a parameter action and just a normal action is the fact that when you set up a parameter action, what it's doing is it's changing the actual parameter. So let me show you an example of this to illustrate the point. So if I I want to pull out an actual parameter. So let's do company selector, right? So I have this company selector. I can easily, so this is a parameter, I can easily come in here and change these things, right? See how now it's also enacting on the dashboard to change the highlighting. Now, essentially what the action is doing is changing that for me. So what it's doing is it's taking a field. Let me show you the action here. It's taking that field, whatever, so the target parameter, of course, is company selected, right? And it's taking a field from the view. So the field actually has to be on the view, which is why we have company name on nearly every single of the dashboards that it's affecting. And it's essentially all it's doing is taking that field and inserting it into this parameter, and that's why it's changing it. So you can see as I click on these things, so watch this parameter here, right? It is literally just changing the parameter. So it's almost like you're selecting something else, but it's using an action to do it for you instead. So it really drives that whole interactive piece that makes Tableau so amazing. I hope that answers the question.
I think so. I'm going through and kind of trying to mass unmute people. There was one question that you are welcome to answer as well, Greg, because you do this quite a bit, but I also have some ideas around, in our experience, how much, oh no, I just broke something. In our experience, how much do executives actually interact with these type of dashboards? Even if you make something dynamic and informative, sometimes there's a hard time encouraging engagement. Do you have any tips and tricks? And we'll kind of open that up to the panel too, to also address, since it's not just what Rossi presented.
Yeah, I would love to open that up. I want to hear what people have to say.
Yeah. Amy Wu, I don't know if not to put you on the spot, but I know you do quite a bit of executive reporting with your Viz Doctor. Is there anything you want to share to help drive that kind of engagement?
I'm sorry, can you speak up, please?
Oh yeah, somebody asked a question about with executives trying to get them to interact with content. Do you have any best practices or tips for driving engagement? And I just thought of you because I know you do quite a bit in that space. It's not enough to make a compelling story. How do you get a C-suite to actually look at what's been built?
I always start out with asking what the goal is. Mm-hmm. So before I do any visualization, I say, what's the goal of what you need to see? And that's what we'll show on the board. Because people may say, like, at the end, we like to add this and this. But if you start out with the main data that they want to see, it stops a lot of questions later.
Yeah. Yeah. I also find that, so there are some features that are in server and online around like forced subscriptions, data-driven alerts. You know, to Amy's point, sometimes it has to be what is important to you. And then outside of that, kind of we're tasked with the responsibility then of how do we make it available on mobile, as clean and quick a story and simple a story as possible. Because a lot of times the reason that you see executive engagement drop off is just because we kind of give them what they ask for instead of what they need. So what they ask for is a cockpit of everything under the sun, and what they actually need is just, is my business on fire? What are the 2 things I need to take care of this morning? So the more you can kind of refine that story and have there be data-driven alerts, leveraging things like webhooks so they get text messages or Slack notifications when something big happens, and they just kind of continue to refine it, that's where you tend to start seeing a little bit more adoption, in my experience. But some of that is also, at the end of the day, you kind of, it is a little bit of a carrot and stick.
Yeah, and I would say from an executive standpoint, they, in general, they're looking to monitor the health of the business, right? So there's going to be these really key metrics. And I think that was really the inspiration behind this new metrics feature that has come out. It really allows executives, even if you were to create like a large dashboard like this that had a bunch of companies and all this stuff, it allows them the ability to see the whole picture. But then if they have particular parts of the business that are like I said, monitoring the health, the metrics allows them to focus specifically on those metrics, which is really powerful in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. David, you had a question. I see your hand raised in the chat, and then we'll get to the other 2 that are on the Q&A.
I was just going to add my 2 cents to the question that was posed as far as
Go
getting
for it.
executives to engage. My experience is that sometimes what we miss is we build these wonderfully interactive dashboards that on the surface, like you said, just looking at them, they already answer their question. So they don't get any motivation to start clicking around or even hovering over things for viz and tooltips or anything like that. Don't underestimate the power, if you can get it, of a demo for that executive. So when you demo it and you show them the hidden viz and tooltips and you show them the power of the drill down and the highlight, to answer additional questions, you have to lead them with, yes, you see this, but then you would ask the next question, and here's how you answer it. The demo is critical. Otherwise, they're not going to figure it out on their own to go in there and start clicking around and hovering on things. No matter how much, if you put too much instructions, then there's too much text. So it's that balance, but the demo is critical.
I'd like to add an I button on there, like a picture, so that they can hover over it for instructions. Or sometimes you just have, like, you know, as a box, you just click it and you can have it open and push down the chart.
Yeah.
That is helpful.
Kobe, I see your hand up too. Is there something you'd like to add, or do you have another
Well,
question?
to the last person's point, I thought that was a really astute comment, and that's kind of led me to while I was thinking about all the answers, are the use of the tooltips and how effective those could be, because I just think it's a tremendous visual, and it's simple and it's easy to follow, but it could well miss the mark. And I've gotten certainly my butt handed to me in these executive presentations before, and I was wondering if there maybe perhaps the tooltip might be another sort of tool in the tool bag that might be able to be utilized. It's just curious, because I just like the way it looks. It's simple, it's easy to follow, but I was curious as to whether there was a previous executive action, if it was favorable, or if it just completely missed the mark, and this is more for our peers and that sort of thing, a working group.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Millie, I tried to make it so that you could actually unmute if you'd actually like to be more of a discussion versus, or no, oh, no, that was Kobe. You were the one who asked the question. Well, sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
I literally was like, oh,
Anyway, I'll
what a
stop
great
now.
thing to bring up to the
I'll
person
stop
who
now. I
asked.
think those are all great, great answers, and I appreciate
Yeah.
the feedback. But I'm certainly going to try and see if I could do some more work on this, because I really like it.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, so we saw so before I answer new questions, because we had some come on the chat, and then I'll get to you, Hamida, so because I want to hear your question too. Outside of the is Alteryx a buy, we're making no comments on what you should do with the stock market, just that you can see and understand it as much as anyone can see and understand the market in these times. So we had a couple other open questions. This was for Keith, for you, Rossi. It seems like more about the specific workbook. The TWV solution, the proportional trading volume doesn't update whenever you select a company.
TWV.
Yeah, can you just review that? That might be on the Tableau public dashboard.
Okay.
So it might be you want to republish.
Sorry,
this.
which part isn't updating?
The proportional trading volume doesn't update
Oh,
whenever you select a company.
So let me take a look at it. Yeah, I may just publish over with this one.
Yeah, I noticed.
Oh,
that
you know
earlier.
what? It's because proportional trading volume is actually, it's not going to be changing based on actions. So proportional trading volume is just relying on the set. So really,
okay,
the way to adjust that is by clicking on the, the actual company focus. Now there are different workarounds we could do for that. In fact, I could show you just a really quick, like if you wanted that to happen, and this is actually a pretty cool use case too, like I could essentially take company name, drag that on detail, and then I could take that name selector and put that on color. And now if we go ahead and go to the dashboard and start clicking around, all of them back. Now it will, right? So the intention there was really to show, this what's included and excluded from the set as just like a proportion. But if you wanted to really just break it up by company, like that would be the way to do it, which is also an interesting view as well, right?
Yeah, wonderful. Hamida, you asked a good question, and then you asked it in the Q&A, so thank you. You could do both. You could do live. But the question about having a simple icon or a button on the dashboard so that someone can quick export, if that's possible. Yeah, I'll go for it, Rosie.
Yeah, let me show you really quick. So if you wanted to, that is actually a new feature. I think it came out maybe 2020.1, but they have this new export button down in the object section. So I'm going to drag this out. I'm going to hold shift to just float it right now. And you can see export to PDF. Now this function is just like the buttons you add to the page, right? So I could do edit button. I could change it to an icon if I wanted to. I could adjust the text. And then really at the end of the day, what that is doing is it's exporting it to PDF once it's published up. And of course you could change this to export as an image, as a PowerPoint, whatever suits your needs there. So yeah, there is a quick and easy way to do that. I think that answers the question, right?
Hamida, does that answer the question?
I heard something.
Yeah. I think it does. If it does, oh yeah, please. Is that what you were looking to? Oh, can you show it one more time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Remove it for sure. So we have this, obviously the objects panel, right, where we drag out all of our containers, our text marks, our images. They added a new one called export. If I go ahead and drag that out, we can situate it somewhere on the dashboard, just like a normal container. If you hold shift, it actually makes the container float, so you can situate it wherever. And then we could just basically click on the little edit button, change it to, if we want it to be an image, you could do that. You choose your own image, which I've done that before. It could export to an image, a PowerPoint, PDF. You could style it a little bit, add a tooltip if you wanted to, right? There it is.
Yeah, it's something that, because I was at Tableau for a number of years before taking some time to travel and then joining the Zor team. And probably one of the biggest questions I would get from leadership is, this server's so amazing and it's so live. Why would people ever want to export? And sometimes the reality is I'm looking at this dashboard, I'm seeing really great insights. I notice an outlier of there's 5 customers I want to call. The ability to just export that into Excel or into a PowerPoint, or like finding an insight and saying, I'm just going to quickly grab that as like an image, is sometimes still quite powerful, especially if you're an individual who doesn't really have control over if server expands in your company, but you're saying, I still need a way to share these insights. So that can be a really great way. Yeah. You can actually export the data. So I think that would either be a CSV or an Excel.
Yeah, and the data piece is a little bit different. I don't think they have the ability to do that on the dashboard button. But again, one quick way to do that, they do have like on server. Actually, this is a cool trick we can show really fast. So let's go back to the actual dashboard, right? So if I was on here, we could select a measure, say I selected this, and then I could do download the data. Again, we could do only what is selected. We could do like summary, or we could do the entire public company's data. One of the other cool features is that, and this is a little known thing, if you actually take the URL and you add .csv to the end of it, like you delete all the way up to the question mark, .csv, it downloads the entire data as a CSV file.
Yeah. That's really exciting. And then for those who might be new to some of the kind of roles that Tableau has, if you have a viewer role only on server, you're able to download summary data. If you have an explorer role, you can be permissioned to actually get the detailed underlying data as well. So if you're in maybe a capacity where you have to control some of this, there's even mechanisms within server to kind of do a little bit of each. Millie asked a good question. Can you explain the proportional brushing? It says, thanks for a great presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm guessing you're referring to this proportional trading volume, right? So let me, where did I put my workbook? I guess it's this one here.
And then this is probably the last question we have time for before we actually end the meeting. So, so this is
good.
your last chance. If you guys have one or two last things you want to throw out there.
So let me, I guess I could, do I have the other one open? I do. So the proportional brushing works by basically, we're essentially, the reason why like it doesn't just drop down if we just remove things from the set is because it's not actually filtering things out. It's just including, it has the entire set here, and then it's just adding individuals inside or outside of the set on a color mark, right? So if we were to actually put this on filter, like as kind of a normal process, right? Then as we begin to deselect things, it's actually removing it completely from the view. But because we are just actually putting it on a color, it's going to continue showing the total number while you add and remove people from the set. Does that make sense? And just additionally, if you, on the PowerPoint there that I was showing, they get a little bit more into it. I don't remember where it was in here. Somewhere here. Yeah, if you go look at this blog post, they talk a little bit more about it, maybe like in depth. So feel free to check that out.
Yeah, wonderful. And then one last question from Melissa. She said you had mentioned you were going to show some other ways that you work with headings on a text table earlier. Whenever you use the dual access.
Let's
show one or two of those things?
let's get into that really quick here.
Yeah.
So,
and then the remaining questions we'll make sure that we capture you guys either via email and one-offs. Just because I don't want to keep everyone too long, but I appreciate those sticking around and kind of getting deep.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to see, because I did make a workbook at one point that was multiple. So one of the things I really like to do is show tabular views that have multiple different mark types inside, right? So here's a fast trick that I'm going to show you. And I don't know if you know about the min pill trick, right? So what I'm going to do is type a calculation here, so min 1. And essentially what this will begin doing is opening up other calculations for us to begin adding different mark types, right? So, and then this is going to really end up relying on this title thing that I showed you. So like, what if I wanted this to be a shape, right? We could do shapes here. I could do, I don't know, what would be something else, like a square, turn the size up a little bit so it filled up the entire container like that. And again, as you can see, the marks are starting to pile up at the bottom, right? But what we could do is, again, dual access these and push the marks to the top again. So again, that was kind of the reason why I went down that route. You're totally right. Like if you have a small number of measures to show, you could obviously just type it in. But for use cases where you want to create this really dynamic chart that has a bunch of different styles of measures in it, different styles of marks, I don't know if line would make sense there, but this is one way to really go about starting to do that. Does that help at all? Does that answer your question? It was really quick. I'm happy to elaborate. I could even send you like a workbook that has an example of this in it if you'd like.
Yeah. Can you show your contact screen one more time, and we'll end that with that. So any additional questions, obviously you can reach out to the tech leaders. We will be sending, as soon as this wraps, we've been recording the Zoom to the cloud. So once that is ready, we will send that out along with the same links that we sent out earlier to everyone who joined. Rossi is making himself available for questions. You can find him at greg.rossi@zora.com. You're also welcome to connect with us on LinkedIn, on the Austin Tug group, or on the Tug page on the Tableau site. There's still like 1 or 2 quick questions that we'll hit you guys up via email, just so that we can kind of be respectful of the group's time. But thank you everyone for joining us. As I mentioned, we're going to be meeting again July 9th. Wonderful job, Greg. Thank you so much for joining and getting hands-on with what is a very exciting release. And yeah, thank you, David, for joining us from Plano. That is also the nice thing is, for now, the benefit of being virtual is it means you don't have to be in Austin to be a part of the Austin Tug. Texas is big enough to accept everyone. So if you have friends in other states or other countries, invite them to the next one in July. And until then, thank you for joining us. Thank you to our Tug Advisory Board too. I know we had some people that needed to hop off, but we appreciate you guys joining as well. And have a wonderful June.
Yeah, great job, Greg.
Yeah,
Thank you,
wonderful
guys.
Good job. Thanks.
job.
Thanks, advisory board.
Bye, guys.
See y'all.
Thanks. Bye, everyone. Have
Bye,
a good
all.
June.
Bye-bye.
You.
Bye.